Welcome to the Voice of St. Anthony Parish from Allston, Massachusetts, right here on WROL 950 AM 100.3 FM. And you can also hear us at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. And we welcome you to our program. This is a bonus episode of the program. This is going to be a bonus part of the interview with Mark Shea. I did not air this on the radio, and the reason for that is this really, more than any other part of his interview, really is focused directly to Catholics. Now, it's important to understand that our program airs on a Christian radio station owned by Salem Media, and of course, I'm sure you're familiar with the name, but we do not broadcast on Catholic radio. We broadcast on Christian radio for several reasons, not the least of which is, number one, Catholic radio is a closed system, whereas Christian radio is an open system. The other thing is that we are able to broadcast to people who are unchurched, many of whom are one-time Catholics, and give them a chance to hear what we do talk about. Well, Mark Shea, as you heard in our previous interviews, is in fact a convert. So I thought it might be a good idea to broadcast through, or actually podcast is a better way of putting it, this particular episode. You've probably heard enough Mark Shea to realize that he can be very strong in his words and his opinions. And these are important things for us to hear, whether we agree with them or not, during Lent, because he's going to challenge positions, especially in light of some of what we've lived through, many of us, during the post-9/11 period, especially in the first 10 years. And so he will talk about some of the issues that you may remember from that time, some of the discussions about whether or not waterboarding should be tolerated, whether or not we as Americans should support waterboarding or any other form of torture in light of our Catholic faith, and whether or not it is something that we should tolerate. And so this is something to challenge what we believe, what we understand, and do know Mark Shea does not pull any punches with his words. So I thought I would air this as a bonus, but I'm going to put a condition on it if you're going to listen to it. Even it's an unenforceable condition. Our focus has been on Catholic social teaching, and of course, this is based on Mark Shea's book, The Church's Best Kept Secret, a primer on Catholic social teaching. And so it's going to address Catholic social teaching on various levels. You're going to hear that. And so what I want you to do is allow this to challenge you, as I said, but also after you hear this episode, and don't do it until after you hear this episode. And you can even listen to this within a group context if you want. And then within a group context, providing you're using the right material done in the right way within copyright law, either individually or as a group, watch the movie The Railway Man. It stars Colin Firth. It is an excellent movie, and I'm not going to tell you anything of what it's about. I'd actually even suggest you do not read the commentary, or what do you call it, the description, what it's about, but I will tell you, I do believe it's an R-rated movie, not for sex, but for violence. And there are rather disturbing scenes in there, and what I'd like you to do is to watch The Railway Man after you hear this, and add that to your discussion. Very powerful movie, and these are very powerful words that bring us back to the post-9/11 period and where we as Catholics stand, not only some of the events then, but some of the events now. And now, here is our bonus episode with our interview with Mark Shea.
There's a Baptist theologian named Russell Moore, who gave a speech a couple of years ago where he said something I will never forget. He remarked that conservative Christians are the people conservative Christians warned you about 20 years ago.
Isn't that something?
And I thought, I can't argue with that. You know, I mean, 20 years ago, I took serious, and I still do take seriously the warnings that conservative Christians were giving me 20 years ago about things like relativism and ends justify the means morality. I internalized all that. You know, I am as pro-life as I have ever been. And the arguments, you know, that were made at the time, which I believed and still believe, were all about how you cannot do evil, that good may come of it.
Right.
And in the early 2000s, when the United States began to use torture, which the church describes as a grave intrinsic evil, just like abortion.
Right.
I was stunned to watch conservative Christians completely throw the church over on this and come out, and Catholics came out in greater percentages than the rest of the American population. The biggest defenders of the use of torture in the aughts during the Bush administration were conservative Catholics.
Wow.
Pew Research, did the polls, and Catholics loved it. White conservative Catholics loved it better than the general population.
And that would bring in something that you connect with, the idea that it's important for us to believe in God, but not when he interferes with our national security.
Or with my fear for my skin. Was what it really meant.
Really?
And also what went with it, frankly, were ancient hatreds of Muslims. This was about fighting Muslims. And therefore torture was okay. Because, and then you get the fantasy scenarios. Well, suppose that there's a ticking time bomb somewhere. Right. And the arguments, what struck me about the arguments was that the arguments were morally indistinguishable from, suppose somebody has a tubal pregnancy. Doesn't that mean that we have to legalize abortion?
Wow.
Here's a very remote, unlikely scenario. Now, let's draw a principle from it that we really want to believe. And it was all ends justify the means argumentation, in a different form. And that troubled me to see that. And it troubled me as well to realize that the people who had taught me, just listen to the Pope and pay attention to the Pope's teaching, the people who told me that in the 90s, were the same people who said, don't listen to the Pope. We have to go to war right now. Despite the fact that, eventually two popes and all the bishops of the world said there is no way to square the Iraq war with just war teaching.
Right.
American conservative Catholics said, well, screw that. We're going to do it anyway. We don't have to listen to what these ivory tower liberal bishops have to say to us. And I just thought, okay, so these guys don't actually believe the teaching of the church. They believe in accessorizing their political ideologies with whatever fragments of church teaching they can find in order to, make it fly with their conscience.
And you're referring to the people who are saying we don't have to listen to the ivory tower liberal bishops.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't need to listen to the church's teaching on just war. I mean, I saw phenomenal arguments during that period of time. One of the arguments used to justify the use of torture was, well, we get to kill people in war, so why don't we get to torture them?
I saw that in your book. By the way, the book we're talking about with Mark Shea here is The Church's Best Kept Secret, about the Church's social teaching. Church's Best Kept Secret, a primer on Catholic social teaching, with Mark Shea, who we're speaking with here. And I saw that. I saw you said that. And you know what it reminded me of is, I don't know if you've heard this, remember this. Do you remember, or have you ever heard George Carlin's routine on when Muhammad Ali could not box because he wouldn't go to war?
No.
Oh, look it up. It's very similar. It's basically, he comes out and says, you have to hear it in George Carlin's way. It says, well, I like to beat up people. Well, we're not going to let you beat up people unless you can shoot people. If you can't shoot people, then we're not going to let you beat up people, which is in his George Carlin way. You have to listen to it. But that's the first thing I thought of when I read your line. If we can kill people, why can't we torture them?
Right. And, of course, the answer to that from the church is that you don't get to kill people.
Right.
It's not a privilege. It's not a treat. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to kill people in self-defensive situations and things like that, or it's there's legitimate arguments to be made there. But the moment someone becomes a prisoner, you don't get to shoot them. They're your prisoner now.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the first point of the church's social teaching. There are four pillars, as I call them, of Catholic social teaching, and the first of them is the dignity of the human person. Mm-hmm. That every human being is made in the image and likeness of God, and therefore our call. And by the way, not merely as Catholics, but as human beings, our call is to respect the dignity of the human person from conception to natural death. So the Church talks about natural law, and it points out that there are things, in the words of J. Budziszewski, he wrote a book called What We Can't Not Know. There are certain things that we can't not know. We can't not know that it is wrong to murder people, and the way that we can know that this is deeply ingrained in what it means to be human. I always point to a Steve Martin routine that he did years ago, where he said, if you find yourself on trial for murder, just tell the judge, I forgot murder was a crime. Everyone laughs, but the reason you laugh is because there are things you cannot know.
No, that's a good point. Yeah.
And so when we speak about the dignity of the human person, we, as Catholics, our task is to share from our tradition with people who may not share that tradition, but nonetheless, there are certain things everybody, whatever their religious or political or philosophical ideas are, there are certain things that people can't not know. Mm-hmm. And so what we can do as Catholics is that we can, among other things, we can provide an account of why it is that human beings are to be respected. The answer of the tradition is because they're made in the image and likeness of God, and because despite the fact that they have sinned, Christ died for them and rose from the dead for their salvation. And so that is, in the Catholic telling of things, that is the universe that we live in. And because of that, that means every single human being without any exception whatsoever. So I tell a story in the Church's Best Kept Secret. Somebody asked a nurse who was working in Africa helping Ebola patients. And she was a Catholic nurse, and she was helping, anybody who came because they were sick with Ebola. So, Muslims, Christians, animists, you name it. Somebody said, "Why are you treating non-Christians?" She said, "I don't treat people because they're Christian. I treat people because I'm Christian."
Right.
And that is always the case in the church's social teaching, is the qualification for being respected as a human being is not whether you're Christian or not. It's whether you are human.
You're listening to the voice of St. Anthony Parish from Allston, Massachusetts, right here on WROL 950 AM 100.3 FM. And you can also hear us at CatholicAudiomedia.com. CatholicAudiomedia.com. We'll be right back right after this. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com. And you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. Mark Shea referred earlier in the program to a survey by the Pew Research Center. You'll find that survey linked on CatholicAudiomedia.com on our page that says mentioned on the show. You'll also find another article that says similar material from U.S. Catholics, so you'll find that over on that page. In the meantime, check us out at CatholicAudiomedia.com and at WROL 950 AM at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. In Cristo vivimos.